Okay, folks, I'm here to talk a little bit about the new 50th anniversary White Album. I have here the deluxe set, which is the only one that I've gotten. I don't have the vinyl. There's a couple of vinyl editions out there, a 2 LP vinyl edition that just has the album, and there's a 4 vinyl LP edition out there that has the album itself and also the Essure Demos. And then there's a 3 CD set that contains the album and the Essure Demos. The only way to get the full content is by this deluxe box, which is well worth it from what I've listened to. I've heard this now a couple of times, and all the contents I've gone through. And this has not only the items I mentioned, the Essure Demos and the album itself, but a lot of alternate takes, sessions, and things like that. So this is the one you want to get if you want to be complete in this. All right, so I'm going to be talking a little about this. I went through the new mix by Giles Martin of the White Album. I went through it twice, all the way through. Now, the way I listened was on CDs, as I say. This is not vinyl. And I listened to the CD in my car a couple of trips where I was driving for a long time, was able to really drink it all in, and I was listening very closely, and I got a very good system in the car. I have not listened through headphones. Some people have been evaluating the album through headphones, and you can get maybe more of a feeling and appreciation for the mix and the panning or whatnot, and what side we have this and what side we have that on. Did the best I could with what I had. Okay, and I got to say, overall, I'm happy to say that after listening to it twice, I'm very overall happy with the results Giles Martin did in remixing this. Now, I have some reservations. There's some things I'm not that keen on, and I'm going to talk about things here. I have some notes in front of me here that I jotted down where I'll try to remind myself. There's a lot of songs here to go through. I'm going to go through the album itself, the remix, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the extras. Okay, so let's see how fast I can go through this, because I don't want the video to be too long, but feel free to skip it to what you like. The first time I listened to this, I had a much different feeling. I started feeling like, wow, I don't like some of the changes that Giles Martin did here, and by the second listen, I kind of prepared myself. I knew what was in store, but the second listen was a different experience. And I can't really explain that, except to say that, sometimes when you're listening to a certain album for a long time, I mean, I've listened to the White Album. I had my first copy about 40 years ago, so I've been listening to the White Album for about 40 years. And you listen to songs zillions of times over, and you start having them etched into your mind and what they sound like, and little nuances, little things you hear that you expect to hear. The way Giles Martin seems to mix things, from what I can tell, based on things like his tracks that he did for the remastered, or remixed, I should say, One album, the Hits album, and then also what he did for last year's Sgt. Pepper's anniversary. It just seems like he decides what things should be brought up louder and what things should be quieted. And sometimes it's all a very subjective thing. I like those results. Some of the songs on the One compilation, I liked what Giles did. Same thing with Pepper. Other things I didn't really care for what he did. And the same thing happens here. But overall, I think this is a really good listening experience. Overall, even with the negatives, I think I have to say this is pretty good. And if I had made this video upon my first impression, it wouldn't have been as strong as it is now. So I'm glad I gave it a second look. Sometimes your mood or the time of day or situation, you can just have a different evaluation. So anyway, the drums, as we know, a lot of people have talked about this, the drums are now brought up higher, which is great, because a lot of times Ringo's drums were not given, I don't believe they're due. I don't believe on the original recordings that sometimes you didn't get Ringo's drums the way they should. And I like when any kind of remixing gives Ringo some more sound, that you can hear those skins. So I really like the drums being brought up. Also, of course, the bass has been brought up here. Now, Paul McCartney, from what I'm told, didn't like the first time that Giles Martin presented the mix of the White Album, so this is another run-through, I guess. Paul and Ringo and Olivia Harrison and Yoko Ono and everybody involved have to approve of this. So, as I say, the main thing you notice is there's a lot more power into the songs, a lot more in the drums and bass, so that's a good thing. I'm not going to go through every single song necessarily in detail. I'm going to go pretty quick, actually. I'm going to try to. So I'll tell you what I thought and this is me now, on just about all the songs here, one of the best things is the vocals are more upfront, and in some cases where the vocals were off to the side, now you get them more centered. I should mention also that something I meant to say when I was discussing the changes and subjectively whether one likes them or not. It's a lot of it. You have to realize people have said in various reviews and comments, you know, if I want to hear the album the way it always was, I could just play the old album. What's the point? And there's a lot to be said about that. What's the point of doing a remix if you're not going to have some changes? If it's going to sound exactly the same as what's gone before, it's true. You can just listen to the old stuff. The idea is something different here. So Back in the USSR starts the album with a real forceful feeling. I mean, Paul's voice is loud in the front. You can even hear Paul near the end of the song very clearly saying a lot of things that you couldn't hear on the original stereo mix too much. This is, by the way, stereo, I should mention. It's not mono, this particular new mix. But that's Back in the USSR. I thought it was really a good job on that one. Dear Prudence, the next one, a lot of people say, and I concur, John's voice is nice and up front and centered, and you can really hear him. Sounds like John is right there. That's wonderful. The drums are louder. The guitars you can hear better. That's the thing. There's more of a clarity overall in this album. You can hear instruments you've heard before. However, in some cases, as I said originally, there's things that I'm listening for. After decades of listening to a song and getting it etched into your consciousness, it's almost like, where's this and where's that? Maybe there's a little cymbal crash or a hi-hat tap or something that's missing. Or maybe there's even a little audio thing, a vocal thing, a little, ooh, ah, something that you say, I'm used to hearing that, but it's disappeared. So you have to take, I think, the bad with the good. Sometimes if there's things that are raised higher, things you used to hear that are now more pronounced and better for it. Other times you say, well, that's at the expense of something else, sometimes vanishing. Not always in all the songs, but some of them. Glass Onion was really an improvement. I think Glass Onion really brings out the guitar sound clear. Glass Onion I liked. Obla di Obla Da. One of the things I noticed that was kind of a sore point with me, your mileage may vary, the clapping sounds at the beginning of Obla di Obla Da seemed to start a little late. That was odd. They usually start a little sooner. And a lot of people are going to say that's something trivial, but like I said, to each his own. To me, I just think that it feels like something is a little off there from what I'm used to. And I'm too bad about that. But otherwise, I think Obla di Obla Da sounds very good and more pronounced. It's a very vibrant, a happy, exciting, upbeat song. So it works. Wild Honey Pie, not much to say about Wild Honey Pie. It's kind of, again, more pronounced, kind of same-ish to me than what we had before. I think the continuing story of Bungalow Bill, the next track, is an improvement. It's funny, when I first listened to it, I thought that the Yoko part, where she says the line, not when he looked so fierce, I originally thought that her line in there was quieted a little bit, but the second time I heard it, I thought, no, it sounds fine. So, this goes to show you different times. So, overall, I think the continuing story of Bungalow Bill is really an improvement. Now, I was listening to an interview with Giles Martin, and one of the questions was, what was the most difficult track for you to do on this album? And he mentioned While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And no wonder, because While My Guitar Gently Weeps, to me, and I think to a lot of you out there, is one of the strongest, if not the strongest track on this album by the Beatles. And Giles Martin, Giles Martin also said that he felt that George's voice is what really drives the song, that the emotion and everything is to be found in George's voice. So because of that, perhaps, one thing that really disappointed me in this mix is that at the end, a lot of people have commented on this, George is moaning at the end of the song, and he does oh at the end of the song, and that's very much brought up louder. And I think I know why, after hearing the interview with Giles Martin. I think because he feels that George's voice is really the soul of the song, is maybe why he opted to have that moaning and crying of his voice louder. But unfortunately, to me, in my opinion, it drowns out the lead guitar too much. To me, the song is about George's guitar gently weeping. The guitar is weeping, not George so much himself. So I think the guitar is the star of the song. And Eric Clapton's lead guitar, I think, I really compromised, unfortunately, in this mix, especially at the end. But there's a lot of other things that are very strong, too. I mean, you know, overall, it's a more intense sound. It's a better sound overall. It's just the end with the guitar kind of disappoints me a little bit, mainly. That's a disappointment. I only have one other really major disappointment, I think, as we go on, I'll tell you. Then we have Happiness is a Warm Gun. Happiness is a Warm Gun. One thing I noticed about that is, you're used to hearing it so many years. The part when the bass guitar and drums kick in, I think, seems to start early. Almost like it's too soon on the cue in this version. That struck me as being different in that. Side 2, I noticed, to me, side 2 has very few changes. Songs like Martha, My Dear, I'm So Tired, Blackbird, Piggies, Rocky Raccoon, Don't Pass Me By, Why Don't We Do It in the Road, I Will, and Julia, the whole thing. Probably, to me, in my ears, are the least changed. They sound the same, but just very strong, and everything comes out, all the instruments, all the nuances. So I think side 2 is really well done. In some ways, side 2 is the best side as far as sonically, I think, and I just made a note here that I thought, in my opinion, particularly the song Piggies and Rocky Raccoon also, and Don't Pass Me By, really benefited the most, I thought. You know, there's not really much you can do with these. They're pretty, the songs like Blackbird and I Will, you know, and Julia, they're pretty basic, not a lot of frills added to them, so they're not going to sound much different. I really thought that side 2 was really well done, and it's an enhanced improvement. Now we're going to go to side 3. Now, one of the songs, I'll get to that later, I guess. Let me start with Birthday. Birthday. You know, Birthday, you know, it's a rocker, and it's really, really powerful here. Really works well in the remix. I remember first listening to it again, and I thought the part when you hear Yoko Ono and Patty Harrison singing in the background, Birthday, I thought maybe sounded a little too subdued on this version. But the second time it sounded fine. You know, again, depends if you're listening a certain volume, if you have the headphones on. It's fine, Birthday. But I wanted to say, which I started to go into when I got to side 3 because I'm so excited about it. Your Blues, one of my favorite songs here, one of the heaviest songs the Beatles ever did. I think Your Blues is a real revelation here. I love the way Giles Martin brought John's vocal more up front. I think it's a terrific job. Really sounds good. The guitars, the pain, the angst in John's singing, really good job here. And I think John's voice is really shining on this particular mix. So I'm really happy with that. Mother Nature's Son, very strong. Everybody's Got Something to Hide, except Me and My Monkey. Powerful rocker, well done again. You know, just, you could hear everything. The drums, Sexy Sadie. I don't think Sexy Sadie was as much of a change from what I'm used to. Sexy Sadie was good, but I want to come to the song that I was saying. I said there was another song here that I felt was a disappointment, and that's Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter is such a landmark in the Beatles' career. Sometimes they say, you know, it's an early heavy metal song, and Giles Martin had the opportunity to make this song really nasty, really dirtier than it's ever been. That was the idea. You know, Paul said they wanted to try to do it and make it the nastiest, raunchiest, dirtiest thing ever. And right from the beginning, when Helter Skelter started, both times that I heard it, the intro guitar is so light and subdued, quiet. It could have been so loud. It should have been like really like startling you awake, and it wasn't. As the song goes on, you know, again, you can hear the drums, which I like. Ringo really smashes the drums. The drums really powerful. Ringo really beats the hell out of them. And we know now why Ringo says eventually at the end, I've got blisters on my fingers, he screamed. Why? We'll hear the drumming here in this new mix, and you know why. The bass guitar, though, some things are not the same. Now, and not only that they're not the same, but I think there was an opportunity to make them really shine. I was disappointed. I'm not a musician. I don't really know instruments, so So I'm going to ask you out there, there's a crunchy sound. I don't know if it's rhythm. I don't know if that's the bass. But that kind of what I call crunchy thing was so low mixed. I mean, if you would have brought that up powerful, it really would have made this thing really, really dirty. I don't know why it wasn't done. Hey, everybody has a different subjective opinion. If I were mixing, if you were mixing, there'd be a whole different thing you'd try, depending on what you liked. One man gets to decide it, I guess. But all of that is acceptable enough, though, you know, really. But what gets me is the end of the song. The very end is so quiet when it crashes down. And the yell at the end when Ringo says, "I've got blisters on my fingers," down. That is such a missed opportunity. It's just so quiet. It should have really been shouted out loud. It's almost like somebody screaming off in another room. It's just really disappointing. So Helter Skelter, to me, and it's a shame, Helter Skelter is one of the best songs on the album, in my opinion. While My Guitar Gently Weeps is one of the best songs, in my opinion. And those are the two songs, to me, that are most disappointing to me on this. Then we come to Long, 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 the end of side 3. And a lot of people, myself included, always felt that George Harrison's voice was a little too quiet in the original release. You couldn't really hear his voice. You had to struggle to really hear it. Well, here, Giles, thankfully, brings George Harrison's voice up so you can hear his voice, no problem. I think Long, Long, Long is a very underrated song. I've always loved it. This new mix does it a lot of justice. However, just to quibble a little bit, I mean, I'll take it this way, but to quibble a little bit, I think what happens is it loses some of its eeriness. There was a sort of spookiness or eeriness or otherworldliness about Long, Long, Long originally. I think when you have George Harrison's voice so prominent and everything so prominent, it kind of loses a little of that, but it's a great song. Maybe I'll quibble, too, that the ending is way too loud. But this is all subjective stuff, excuse me. It's all, you know, what we think subjectively. It's not, you know, anybody else can make a different decision. Trying to wrap this up because the time's rolling on here. We get to side 4. Revolution 1 is done really well, very clear. You know, everything comes out. Same thing with Honey Pie. Not much I could say about that. When I get to Savoy Truffle, again, it's so nice to have George's voice more centered. I think Savoy Truffle is one of my favorite tracks on here. It's an overlooked track. I think it's really well done. I also think here the mix for Cry Baby Cry is wonderful. It certainly beats the original mix, in my opinion. I like to have John's voice, again, in your face, right up there. You can hear him enunciate better. I just like the overall sound. And this is not just the voices, but, you know, the instruments, too. Then we go to Revolution 9. Now, Revolution 9, the first time I played the album, I skipped over it. Second time today when I played it, I said I'm going to listen to the whole thing. You know, anytime I listen to the White Album, for the most part, other than this first time, I usually will let Revolution 9 play all the way through. I think one of the great things about the White Album is there's so many different things on here. You got country music, you got ballads, you've got show tunes with Honey Pie, you've got a lullaby on here, you've got so many different kinds of music. Why not have an experimental, outrageous acid track on here too? That's just crazy. So I like that it's on here. But for some reason, I mean, I'm not going to play Revolution 9 as often as others, except when I'm listening to the album completely through. What can you say about it? I'm going to pass over it. I mean, I actually thought maybe it wasn't as strongly mixed as on the original, but that's just me. I don't know. But I want to go to the last song on the album, Good Night, Ringo's vocal. Much better, much more enhanced musically and also vocally. And I really like that you could hear the background singing of Sleep, Sleep, and whatever. You could hear that much more clearly and much more brought up, I thought. So I really like it. Overall, very happy overall, with some reservations. I think a lot of times this will be probably my go-to mix. But you know, you have different mixes that you can enjoy. I don't like the original mono mix, so I don't listen to the mono mix. It's just a personal thing. It's not my thing. I like the stereo. And I think I prefer the original mix overall, but lately this brings out the power so much of the drums and the instruments that, like I say, I may make this my go-to. Right now, I'm like this about it. So it's unfortunate that there are two songs here that have problems, but overall, I've thought for a while now that maybe if someone asked me, what's your #1 Beatles album, your favorite Beatles album in their regular catalog? I've said lately the White Album. And I'm beginning to think, especially hearing this mix so strongly and so clearly, with clarity, bringing out the best, I'm beginning to think this is the Beatles' masterpiece, this album. It's got so much on it, so much versatility, so much difference, and all the Beatles sound really great on it vocally. John, Paul, George, and even Ringo, I think sound really good vocally. I think they're at their peak here, in a lot of ways, all of them. So this enhances that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the extra features. If you just bear with me, I'm not going to edit this. I figured I'll just, if I can find what I did. Maybe I will edit this. Oh, there it is, the bonus tracks. Maybe not. First, we have the Essure Demos. The Essure Demos, briefly, are 27 songs. The Beatles had been in India, and Rishikesh, India. When they came back from Rishikesh, they had such a backlog of material that they went to George Harrison's home, and some people are speculating, I think Giles Martin said that not everything was recorded there. I don't know. But anyhow, they had a couple of reels, whatever, double tracking some songs, and they put these 27 tracks down. And they've been available on bootlegs for years, but the quality here is phenomenal. The quality is much improved. If you have your bootlegs, throw them out. People who want to try to, rationalize to themselves, oh, I have the bootleg, I don't need that. You do. The quality is much better. And that's all I could say about it. I listened to them twice, and it's basically acoustic guitar versions of these songs, double-tracked a lot of times, the voices, and they're just a delight. My personal favorite is probably John's Child of Nature, which the melody was eventually used for the song Jealous Guy off the Imagine album, but there are other gems here too. I like the version of Revolution here, is really nice. You've got stuff here even that they didn't wind up recording, like Sour Milk Sea from George, Circles from George, and so on. So there's not really much I'll say about those. It's great to have them, but I'm going to go now on the sessions, what they call the sessions bonuses. And again, the only way you can get all these sessions is to buy the big CD, 6 CD box set. Okay, I'm going to tell you the highlights, in my opinion, what I thought were highlights here. First of all, Revolution 1. It's the first bonus track you get here. Revolution 1, the slow version of Revolution, I've never liked as much as the fast version. And one of the things that always soured me on it, I think a little bit, was I never liked the shooby-doo-wah that they put in there in Revolution 1. Well, this version of Revolution 1 is it's the same vocal, but before they put in the shooby-doo-wah. So it's really a treat. I love it. I wish they would have recorded it like that without the shooby-doos in there. I love 50s music, folks. I love doo-wop. Not on here, I don't. I got to say that. However, what's really cool is at the end, John goes completely wild at the end, and Yoko talks about, you become naked and all that. You'll notice the stuff that was used on the end of this take of Revolution 1, the early take, I forget what number it is, I don't have it, well, I have it over here, Revolution 1, take 18. You can hear all the noises and vocal effects that John and Yoko did that were incorporated into Revolution 9 after the fact. They're on this take of Revolution 1. Another highlight everybody's talking about, maybe the #1, maybe the best on here, is a wonderful take 10 of Ringo's vocal Goodnight. And the beautiful part is it'll really reduce you, get you teary-eyed in a way if you're in the right mood emotionally. It's got the other Beatles singing harmonies with Ringo on the Goodnight, Sleep Tight line, all of them together. And that's just one, it's such a highlight of this. Then you have stuff like a rehearsal version of the fast vocal of Revolution, which was good. We have Helter Skelter, Take 17, which is the heavy Helter Skelter, like on the regular album, a run through of that. We have a nice acoustic, slower take of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Take 2, which is different from the one we're used to hearing, I believe. I don't believe it's the same one that we hear all the time, the acoustic While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Then we have a third version called While My Guitar Gently Weeps, third version, Take 27, which is really nice. That's like the album version with Eric Clapton and a run through of that, which is fun. Hey Jude, Take 1, which is a lot of fun. You know, Hey Jude is on. This is kind of weird having that on here, but that's what they did around this time. So it's here. Then we have What's the New Mary Jane, another version of that song, which I always found fun. I like it. John gets a kick out of it. In fact, this version has John laughing at some of the lyrics. He tries to keep, from laughing in a couple of the lines. And I think that was a lot of fun. I don't think it's the same one that was on Anthology. Then, there's the version of Can You Take Me Back. You'll note on the beginning of the end of Cry Baby Cry on the album into Revolution 9, you get Paul singing Can You Take Me Back Where I Came From, that little snippet. Well, here is what you might call the full or long version of it. So that's a lot of fun to hear a more fleshed out version of that Can You Take Me Back. Makes me realize more than ever that Can You Take Me Back should have been counted as a complete, like an actual song track. A lot of people consider Can You Take Me Back as being the end of Cry Baby Cry. But really, it's its own track. I'm surprised they didn't credit it as a separate track. Also, I love Julia. There's a version on here of Julia which is great because you got George Martin and John Lennon talking together, which is really nice, a little bonding that they do, and I love that. And I love that John starts out strumming the song on his guitar. There's a version of him kind of strumming it, and then he says, I think I can pick it, and he goes into the picking guitar that we know that came to be. And that's also a different version from the one on Anthology, which makes me think, a little quibble here, some of the stuff on that we get on the extra bonus tracks, we did get already on Anthology 3, and I don't know why, with all the material that they could have chosen, why they would repeat stuff that we had on Anthology 3, but there's more than enough stuff here to make this new set worth getting. And just a little quibble here again, things that I wasn't wild about, if I may say. I'm never, personally, this is only me, subjectively, I'm not wild about what I call karaoke instrumentals. I don't need to hear songs like Lady Madonna, which is on here, just the music without the vocals. I don't need to hear Revolution, although it's fun, in the fast version of Revolution without the vocals is kind of fun, I gotta say. But I call it karaoke. I like vocals, I like the whole thing, different takes. I'm not really wild about just the existing track without the singing. However, I gotta admit, I am guilty of, when I listen to just the music for Savoy Truffle, of singing the lyrics in the car and trying to sing along with it karaoke style. Guilty. So, speaking of guilty, one of my quibbles here is there's a version of Not Guilty, Take 102, the same version we're used to from Anthology. However, I think on Anthology, it was much, much better. George's voice was more up center. I don't know why it was like 100 or more takes of Not Guilty to choose from. Why they're using the same take 102 and not none of the others, I don't know. But I like Not Guilty better on Anthology. That's one sour point here. There's a version of Let It Be here that it's not worth the hype. It's a very short version. It's very primitive in its early stages. Sounds nothing really like Let It Be, we know. But it's only interesting because this is what they call the Mother Malcolm version. Originally, Mal Evans, the road manager, said the original line was Mother Malcolm comes to me. And sure enough, that's what we hear here before Mother Mary was used. So that's it. I went through it as fast as I could. It's still a half an hour. I don't know. Little things, I could do without Step Inside Love and Lost Paranoias. They were already on Anthology and stuff. But overall, a great package. Very happy with this. And overall pleased with some little reservations here and there with the Giles Martin remix. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching, and I really hope we get Abbey Road in 2019.